Still onto the economy today, and today we're going into the flooding. We want to revisit flooding in Nigeria. Recently, we had issues with flooding in some parts of the country, especially in Lugwe, around Abuja, and some other parts. And now the rains are coming in heavily. And last year, a warning came to Nigerians to be careful of the rainy season and to prepare ahead for a reoccurrence of such damages that were able to damage both lives and properties. We want to look at all that, and for me to discuss this with me today in the studio is Adereti, Emmanuel. Looking at it economically, how can that be stopped, and what can the government do? You're welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah. So I know we're in the raining season now, and everybody is feeling the raining season, though it is coming in and off, and we're not really deep in the raining season now, but yet we're seeing a lot of flooding here and there. In fact, I heard that some part of Lagos, when it rains, you saw reptiles. People started seeing reptiles and all that, and that's dangerous to health. And then there's a heavy flow of mosquitoes and the rest of that. And also it affects businesses, because some people will not be able to go to their business venues, and some people will not be even able to go back home, especially when they are caught at the office and going back home and everywhere is flooding. There is no good drainage system, the roads are bad, and we barely even get some warnings ahead. Like some other climes, you just hear over the radio that in the morning today we are going to have something. So sometimes we don't even believe in the weather forecast that's the given in the country about some particular areas on that. We just find out that, okay, they might say it is sunny, and then it starts raining all of a sudden. So I want us to look at that and how it affects businesses.
Okay, well, I'm going to say first and foremost that the major cause of flooding that we have in Nigeria is not peculiar to Nigeria alone, and the entire world has been screaming climate change, and these are some of the fallouts from, climate change. Now, having said that, when it comes to flooding, there are things that are beyond our control, and there are things that we actually can control. By we can control and by we cannot control, I'm referring to the government and its people. Okay, so the government on the one hand and the citizens on the other hand. And on the part of the government, they need to be a little more proactive. I mean, it's not enough to raise alarm bells, warning signs, and then you just fold your hands and you're doing almost nothing about it until these things begin to happen, and the devastation, becomes widespread and all of that. So there's a lot that the government needs to do, in terms of being proactive, in terms of being able to properly manage and improve the network of drainage systems that we have. And by government, I'm not referring to the federal government alone. I'm referring to government at all levels, because the local government has a role to play, the state government has a role to play, and the federal government has its own role to play. So it has to be collective, the effort have to be collective, and they have to be in sync with one another, to be able to achieve this, because the reality is that checkmating flooding, it's expensive, and it's not something that individuals can take upon themselves alone. There's a role for them to play, which I'll get to, in a bit. So the government, at all levels needs to improve upon the existing drainage systems we have. They need to create more channels, more ditches, to be able to direct the excess waters, in the directions that you want them to go to. And then also it's time that the government begins to plant trees, because if you have trees planted, across every metropolis and all that, when there's heavy flooding, the presence of those trees, reduces the force and the flow of the excess water. So thereby, the damage that can be caused is reduced to a very large extent. So that is one of the things that the government can do, and by that I mean the government at all levels. Another thing that they can also do is to properly manage our waste disposal systems. You have, in some states like Lagos State, you have the LOMA, that is in charge of that. There are some states that do not have any. There are some that have. If I were to rate LOMA in Lagos, I'd say I'd probably give them a 50/50. Which is to say, okay, yeah, they're just a try. It's not like they're excellent, and all of that. So we have laws in place that prohibit citizens from throwing things into gutters, improper disposal of waste, burning of refuse, and all of that. The government needs to be able to develop ways of, properly enforcing some of these things. Get a scapegoat, one or two scapegoats, and every other person would, sit up.
Transposing punishable.
Yes.
Like,
those laws are
not
actually
where
in
you are able
place.
to allow people, the agencies who are in charge, to start using it as a money-making venture, because a lot of them will now result in collecting money. Because you mentioned something about climate change, though I do not know the level Nigeria is connected to trying to make sure that the climate change laws are properly effected. We still have a lot of farmers burning bushes. We still have, the bad roads that are not properly constructed. We still have poor drainage systems and all that. But what you said now is like linking both the local government to the state government to the federal government, and then it comes down to also the individuals, that's the main population in the country. So how do all these things happen? Is it an orientation thing, or is it a policy that the federal government should make to be able to make sure that these laws are put in place and they are effective?
It's a little bit of everything. Okay, a little bit of everything, in the sense that I do not think that the problem that we have in this part of the world is the enactment of laws or the making of laws. In reality, in many cases, in many instances, we have solid laws in place, and the issues we've always had has been that of enforcement. There was a time where it was a taboo for you to cross a major federal highway, without being apprehended, by law enforcement agencies and all that, and go to Maryland, go to Ikorodu Road, go to any major express road, you see people, just dashing across the road like they have extra lives kept somewhere. Those laws have not been repealed, they've not been struck out, they've not been cancelled. Those laws are still in place, but they're not being properly enforced. So it's not a law problem that we have in the country. It's more, of what's it called? More of implementation. And then one major problem that we have with government at all levels has been that of management. Okay, you have a network of drainage systems, that are already in place. And now there's no proper mechanism in place to ensure that those drainage systems stay free. They are not blocked, they are maintained from time to time. These are not things that you check up upon only when the rains come. These are things that you should have a timetable. You should be, it should be periodic. It should be systemic. They should, it should just come natural. You have people whose duty it is to ensure that this gutter is always flowing. Do you understand? And when it comes to even our planning, urban planning, we have it all skewed. Nobody follows the laid down plans anymore. For instance, if you look at the plan for Lagos State, you'll discover that there are certain areas that were mapped out to be residential, to be industrial. These are the kind of structures they expect to have in these places. Now go round. None of these things have been followed, and nobody has asked any questions. Nobody is implementing anything, because all you need to do, even when you go, to apply for building approvals and all of that, all you need to do is just settle one government official, even without getting your building approval. Your building is up.
It's open.
So it's a big problem. So we need to find ways. In government, the government needs to find ways to better manage some of these things. Now you have streets.
Can we go on a break, please? Because you are getting into the mood now. We'll go for a very short break now. I'll be right back for him to continue. Welcome back. We're still here discussing on the economy today. That's looking at flooding and its measures to be taken against its reoccurrence. So yes, you were saying.
Yeah, you have old streets. I mean, a whole stretch of streets. It's 100 and something houses, 50 something houses. Sometimes over 100 houses, and there's no gutter anywhere. And then when the rains come pouring, the residents in that area they expect a sort of miracle, to happen so that their houses are not flooded, so that their properties. It's not rocket science. There are basic things that you as an individual, as a landlord, even as a tenant, that you need to ensure are in place yourself. For instance, it will be very stupid for you to, come out in the rain because there's an heavy downpour, then you carry your old garbage and you throw it in the drainage system. Trust me, it's going to come back and bite you.
I think that is very common in this part.
It is, and it is actually, it's foolishness. It's like someone, there's potable water, good water for you to drink. I decide, no, I don't want the good water. I want to take water from the gutter.
That comes to this next question now, especially concerning all these drainages and blocking drainages. Now, businesses, there are a lot of small businesses in this metropolis, especially Lagos State. There are a lot of small businesses. And these small businesses, they operate along the roads, they operate in the hinterlands, they operate where people can see them in the marketplaces and the rest of them. And all these places they do operate, there are drainages. And most times you see these same market people dump their refuges in this gutter, that's in these drainages. I would say yes, some agencies are trying to do their best, but then especially the urban planning people, I think they are really doing their best in planning things well, though the plannings have not really gone round. But the areas they have planned, people who are staying in those areas, businesses staying in those areas, continue to default in the area of dumping refuges, in the area of even taking care of their gutters. How do you now, what do you say to this? What kind of measures do you think should be taken against this thing? Okay,
I want to make a reference to the scriptures, the Bible. And if you read, there's a recurrent theme in the book of Judges. And it is always when the people had no king, when there was no law. And then the next thing that follows is anarchy. Do you understand? Now, if I know that I can do a certain thing and get away with it all the time, I have no reason not to do it. So the reason why these things continue is because these people, that engage in these activities know, like they know their name, that nothing will happen. Which is why I started by saying you may need to make a couple of people scapegoats, pick one or two in different places, 3 or 4 in different places. And by the time they see that the government is no longer joking, everybody will sit up. It's so bad that you're even driving on the streets of Lagos and you see somebody that has just had a bottle of carbonated drink and he just throws it on the road. because he knows there's nothing that will happen. Do you understand? And I think a couple of months ago, I was driving on the road and the guy ahead of me chewed that, and somebody overtook us, went and blocked him, parked in front of him, and said, Oga, go and pick that thing from the road. Do you understand? Go and pick that up from the road. Like joke. The guy, he was forced to, because other motorists came out. Everybody wants to continue their journey now, and if he doesn't pick, we're not going anywhere. So until we get to a point where where these things becomes everybody's business and everybody is concerned about it, because you know that if you throw a stone into the market, it's still going to come back to meet you. So whatever it is, you might feel that, okay, it's not in front of my house, it's the next neighbor that is doing it. Trust me, when your gutter gets blocked down the road, it's going to affect everybody on that street.
It's not just
the person that threw that thing. Do you understand? And what evil does is that the moment, it is attractive. The moment somebody does it and everybody sees that, okay, this guy got away with it, why should I pay Loma? Why should I pay Loma 1,000, 1,500 to take away when I can just trade in the gutter free of charge? So everybody lines up behind that person and continues the team, and we can't continue like that.
I think the issue you just raised, has been on and on for a very long time. So, but my own next question is coming that we have now a new administration that is so new that it hasn't even gotten to a month yet, and really they have been able to bring out a lot of policies, appointments, and the rest of them, and it seems it is moving very fast. What do you advise the new government to do when it concerns things like this, flooding and the rest of them, and making sure that the agencies and parastatals, ministries that are in charge of all this, of all this sector of trying to control climate, not really control, but making sure that people adhere to instructions or adhere to things, it has to get to even the smallest child on the street. What do you think they should do?
Well, I think that first and foremost, they should be proactive, not wait for disasters to come before they respond. It's always, drugs are always cheaper when they are preventive than when they are curative. So they need to be proactive. And I like the fact that they're hitting the ground running in other areas. This is something that should not be treated with kids' gloves. In 2022, last year, the statistics say that over 2 million homes were devastated. Over 2 million homes were either completely destroyed, or partially destroyed. Now that's damning. So they do not need to wait, until damage happens. Now, they also need to be able to create a system of proper checks and balances. Now, if you have somebody heading a parastatal, it should be accountable to somebody. And that person that head of parastatal is accountable to should also be directly accountable to somebody. So when you have people that are asking questions, when you have people that will not just sit in their offices, but that will go around and ensure that the job that others are paid to do, that they actually carry out those jobs. Imagine if you were to employ a cleaner in the house and you pay 50,000 naira a month, you pay 60,000 naira a month to have your house cleaned. Are you not going to always ensure that that cleaner comes and that it does its job?
Because you're always paying.
Because you're the one that is paying. So treat government like your personal business. Now, what you will not take from your business, you shouldn't take while you're in governance. And it's as simple as that.
So, this, you just said the right thing, actually. But our people, you mentioned something about somebody throwing something out, and then somebody has to come block and all that. And if nobody had blocked him, other people would have continued in the same vein to do the same thing. So do you think it has to go to our school systems? Because that person actually went to school. If he didn't go to school, maybe he went to a primary school. And in the primary school, I remember when we used to sing a song in the primary school that something like godliness, cleanliness is close to godliness and all that, and you have to follow all those stuffs. are we missing the line? Because in America, though it is a developed country, so to say, the smallest child knows its constitution, knows everything, the laws, knows his own rights or her own rights. Do you think we have to go back to our educational system to be able to make sure that even the next generation knows much about cleanliness and taking care of the environment?
Yes, I think that beyond just cleanliness, there's a lot that is already missing in schools. You know, we are Nigerians, and we have a culture, generally speaking, that is, you know, and we are people that cherish good values, morals, and all of that. And, you know, we used to have, in those days, a national orientation agency that was active and vibrant, that went about schools, that had advertorials, you know, on radio, on TV, you know, sending solid messages, you know, that was very hard for you to ignore. You know, all of those things need to come back. One of the things that I expect the current administration to do is to ensure that the National Orientation Agency actually begins to do its work. You know, because over the years, in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, you know, they've been too redundant. It seems to me like all they do is just collect the share of the money and then sit down and fold their arms, because there's been almost nothing, you know, from them. You know, so they need to sit up and do this. And also the school system, there are a lot of things that we need to bring back to our academic system, not just the primary, but all the way up.